Well, some of the Warriors came. Some of the Warriors played. And the Nuggets didn't dominate. They got a win. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us part of your week and making us your first listen each and every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. His name's Adam Mares. He's director of content for DNVR. Check out his work at thednvr.com. Coming to you on a Tuesday morning after the Denver Nuggets got a back-to-back win in their third to last back-to-back of the 2021-22 season. They've only got two more back-to-backs after this. They get the win 131-124 over the Santa Cruz Warriors as Golden State leaves back. I always love, Pop was the first one to do this in my awareness. Pop was the first one to be like, we're not even putting them on the plane. Like, it is so not a question that they're playing. They're not even they're not even getting on the flight.
Yeah.
No Andrew Wiggins, no Steph Curry. No, I'm sorry. Let me back that up. No all-star starter Andrew Wiggins. No Steph Curry. No Draymond Green. No Klay Thompson. No Andre Iguodala. And no James Wiseman. No Will Barton for the Nuggets. And let me ask you this first, Adam. We'll talk about Jokic's amazing game, a back-to-back incredible performance, right? The first, by the way, back-to-back 30-point triple-doubles of his career. I looked that up. That was the first time that he's gone back-to-back with a 30-point triple-double. About how great he was. We'll talk about Davon Reed's contributions, Austin Rivers, all these types of guys. I want to start here. Is it surprising to you that this game was close for a lot of the game and that the Warriors hung and had leads and that this wasn't a runaway?
Surprising, no. But I do think Denver probably should have made it a little bit easier on themselves. They did not have the intensity you would have wanted, but surprising, no. Like, this happens. It was a back-to-back. It was a total emotional letdown game from a great overtime win, and then you're going up against Poole and Lee and guys that you kind of know you could beat if you just play well for a little bit. And then on top of that, those guys shot well. I mean, they were on fire. What do you get? You get 8 of 12 from Poole. You get 5 of 12 from Moody from the three-point line. Like, if even just a little bit less of that in this game is probably a runaway, but not necessarily disappointed, not necessarily surprised, but it was, I guess, annoying.
It kind of grades out as like if they had faced the Magic, right?
Yeah.
And it was closer than expected, and everyone would be like, "Yeah, that tracks." I'm always worried about these letdown spots whenever there's a bunch of guys out. In part because I've talked to coaches about this effect, and in part because it's also, I think, in part a little bit of the scouting report where. Like, I've talked about this, about how most players aren't looking at the scouting report. And so they go off
especially
of memory.
Last night. Like, you go to an overtime game, like, it's emotional, this or that. Like, this wasn't you even had less time to look at the scouting report.
Yeah, you have less time to look at the scouting report. Plus, a lot of the guys on this are not going to, necessarily be top level, and they're not guys that they've played before. So in reality, I'm not saying this was like a super adverse spot. It's not. I have come to the conclusion that the biggest edge in the NBA regular season, game by game, outside of health, is motivation.
Motivation, yeah.
And so, this was a low motivation spot. You're on a back-to-back. You're tired. You're like, we can beat these guys. There's no
Well,
step,
do you think who was the most motivated player in yesterday's game?
That's a good question.
I think it's an easy question.
Oh,
I think it was Moses Moody, who is like a rookie. It's like, hey, no pressure. We're probably going to lose, but hey, go out there. Let's see what you got. Let's see what you got. And is it a surprise? First of all, I mean, 5 of 12 from the 3-point line was great, but that dude was hustling. He was out hustling Aaron Gordon all night, grabbing second chance points, like just making plays. And again, like your theory on motivation checks out, because this for him was his all-star game.
Moses Moody, by the way, from the University of Arkansas. Woo pig. Jordan Poole, who was my preseason pick for most improved and sixth man of the year. I bet him in both of those categories.
Those shots he took, man. This like, what is this? I honestly wonder if this is, I know you're going to roll your eyes at this because I know he's a good player. I know he's a good shooter, but the confidence to take some of those shots, you look at and you go, my God, man, is this just like by osmosis? You're around some great shooters and then everybody just all of a sudden has the confidence to take those?
I legitimately think it's a Steve Kerr thing. I think,
yeah.
I think there are coaches that inspire you to have confidence in your shot.
It's a great take.
And the players have talked about that, about how empowered and confident they felt under certain coaches, which I always think the dynamics of pro coaching is interesting given the limitations of that power dynamic. But there definitely are coaches, and I do think that Steve Kerr, and look, I'm sure that Steph and Clay have probably helped. Look, I'm sure that's part of it. But I think Poole was really good last year, and this is a good opportunity, and he's honestly been in a little bit of a slump for a little bit. So caught a napping Nuggets team, but we've talked a lot about like how it was closer. They should, like, the Nuggets won. They got the win, and they did so behind an incredible performance. I don't know. I guess a credible performance at this point. It's pretty credible.
It is actually credible. Yeah.
I'm not incredulous at Nikola Jokic's performance. 32 points, 12 of 17. Didn't take a three tonight. 15 rebounds, 13 assists, 1 block, just 3 turnovers, plus 14. Nikola Jokic dominates once again, back to back.
12 of 17 from the field as well. Yeah, I mean, he looks so comfortable. He looks so good. It's funny because 2 games ago, prior to this last one, you did start to wonder, like, fatigued and a little bit of slump. But I mean, this is how basketball goes, even for great players. Jokic's floor is like second team all NBA, and his ceiling is like top 10 player of all time. And last 2 games, he's been top 10 player all time caliber. And it's just fun. Like, he rides these waves where you're just kind of reminded, like, oh yeah, this guy can do some things. I will say one interesting wrinkle here. He hits 32 points. Like, if he had a stat line, Matt, of 25, 15, and 13, I think we would look at that and say, that's a pretty good game. Like, that's a pretty good game for Yoke. Above average, B+, A- type game relative to his season. 32, those extra 7 points make a difference. And where do those points come from? To me, they come from the foul line, 14 free throws. And that foul line is not necessarily him drawing shooting fouls that he didn't get before. They are him being in the bonus and drawing the types of fouls that he always gets. And that is a credit to that second unit, and in particular DeMarcus Cousins, who is a foul drawing machine. And every time he went into the game, he checked out with Jokic either being in the bonus or on the cusp of being in the bonus.
I love this. That's a really good observation that Cousins maybe the secret to them getting into the bonus and getting him more free throws. I like that a lot. I have to look at bench free throw rate. That's going to be interesting to kind of look
Somebody
at.
ran the numbers for me the other, like, a while back. It's only 13. It's hard because it's a 13 game sample size now, but Yoke's taking about 2 more free throws per game in the 13 games that DeMarcus Cousins played.
That's huge.
2 more. It is pretty huge actually, because that another way to say that is he is taking 40% more free throws.
Yeah.
Like that sounds a lot bigger when you say 40%.
Well, not just that, but like, okay, so here's a better way to contextualize it. If we look at point differential, the difference between a +2 and a +4 is absolutely massive.
Yep, that's true. Yep.
Right, and if Jokic hits like 1.2 or whatever, like that is a huge differential over the course. Like, if you build that out over a long period of time, that winds up determining a lot more games than you would think, especially with the variance of, he'll have more some games and less others.
Not to mention those are just Jokic free throws. There's probably another free throw in there spread out amongst the rest of the team, by virtue of being in the bonus there. So Jokic and DeMarcus Cousins just draw a lot of fouls. specifically Jokic non-shooting fouls, but those turn into shooting fouls when you're in the bonus.
Wow. Okay, that's really cool. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about some of the other contributors in this game. And we'll talk about how they got this win over the Warriors. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I want to let you know about Bet Online. Bet Online is today's sponsor on Locked On Nuggets. And football might be over, but that does not mean that sports are over. Basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. For all the latest odds, stats, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. Not just basketball. BetOnline is your source for hockey. Check out those abs, boxing, and UFC. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for making us part of your day and making us your first listen each and every day. Now make sure your second listen is Locked On Now. It's a daily show with nightly recaps of all the NBA games with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Back here with Adam Mares, breaking down the Nuggets win over the Warriors. So it wasn't just Joker last night, although he did have himself another fantabulous game. Shorthanded. No Will Barton, like now down 3 starters again for not the first time this season, and certainly probably not the last. Austin Rivers has to start in Will Barton's spot, and that frees up minutes off of the bench for Davon Reed, who had himself a huge game. You want to start with Austin or Davon? Let's start with Davon.
Davon. I mean, to me, he was the story. 6 of 8 from the field, 5 of 7 from the 3-point line, 17 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist. And more than anything, Davon Reed, to me, he takes bad shots rarely, but it's not, I don't want to say never, like a Torrey Craig or something where he just like never steps out of the lane. He does it every now and then. Maybe once every other game, he'll take one shot that I'm kind of like, didn't love that one. So he plays within the flow of the offense. He knocks down the 3. He has incredible length, and he's a very good cutter. I love this dude. I'm all in on Davon Reed. Not necessarily this year. I get why Malone, he's kind of buried on the rotation. Like, who's he going to step over? But he's a guy to me that if the Nuggets were to go into this offseason and say, hey, here is a cheap option we can lock up for multiple years that could probably be a rotation piece for us, like, he's worth taking a fly. I just like him. I don't see the reason he shouldn't be on a Nuggets roster going forward.
I agree. If I were, I'm trying to think of how to put this. Even 5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, I would have been like, I don't understand why Davon Reed doesn't play more. Like, he's really good, and he gives them what they need, and he shoots with confidence, and he's a quality shooter. Like, all these types of things. Why doesn't Davon Reed play more? And it's politics, right? It's that Davon's contract is not as valuable as the rest of the guys that they are on the rotation. Like, they need more from the guys that they have under contract. And then you get those guys minutes, and then you need to get them points for bonuses and everything else. And so those guys play. I think Davon helps them. I think Davon gives them the best chance to win in a lot more situations than they give him credit for. And I think, not even credit, I think the biggest thing is just like, they don't have a lot of small forwards. And when you have a small forward who can actually shoot, that's a big deal. Like, they need these types of wings. And so
true.
I do think Davon gives them a quality play at a role of need. That's kind of how it is. It's like they need.
Yeah.
And I will continue to say I'm not huge on the 3 guard lineups. I'm just not. And
is he a guard though?
No, I'm saying that's what I'm saying is like, I'm not big on the 3 guard lineups.
Oh,
so
okay. So
I don't know why. Like, I would rather play Davon Reed over a 3 guard lineup of, Monte and Will and Austin, right?
Right.
They play Austin sometimes at 3, and that's asking too much, honestly. Like, part of me really is
he worked for me, but I also prefer him at the 2.
Yeah. Like, part of me also is just like, can we give Austin a break? Can we not ask Austin to do everything and take like the toughest assignments all the time and play up a level too?
I kind of feel like that's Austin Rivers, though, to be honest with you. Like, I just don't love Austin Rivers' offense. I like it. I think it's okay. But I almost feel like asking him to be 80% defensive player 20% offensive player is actually the right mix. So to me, the whole idea of like, I don't, asking him to do everything, to me, that's where he's at. Like, you want to be in the NBA for another 5-6 years. That's probably what you're going to have to be. And every now and then you're going to catch fire or beat your guy off the dribble. But to me, that's more who he is. But listen to this, Max. I just looked it up. I honestly did not look this up in preparation. Best two-man net ratings with Jokic this year. Yes, it's small sample size. This would lower over time. Number 1, Davon Reed. Jokic Reed, plus 17.6 net rating. Now, most of that is a 93.7 defensive rating, which is probably, again, not going to last for a larger sample size. It's 162. The number 2 lineup, Rivers Jokic at plus 14.7. That's on 520 minutes, and that number makes more sense. 117 offense, 103 defense. The 103, I believe, a lot more than the 94 with Davon Reed. But nonetheless, your top 2 guys both happen to be low usage offensive players who defend really well and can be versatile defensively, in particular on pick and rolls. Like, I think both of those guys might just be Jokic ball players. And I honestly like both of them.
Yeah, I really liked Austin's game last night. That bucket late in the game was absolutely huge. The finger roll that he got, because they couldn't bust the zone with Jokic, and he just like powered his way through and got a layup, and it was big. 15 points, 4 rebounds. Austin was 6 of 12 from the field, hit 2 threes, plus 7 in the plus minus category. I thought Austin was really good last night. I think part of it is that I'm just, because I am always having, you watch, how much non-Nuggets NBA do you watch? Because I know you watch a lot, especially on Locked On NBA, but like how much on a nightly basis do you watch like around the league?
I mean, a decent amount, like the teams I like in particular. So maybe I would say one game like a night.
My thing is, I just think I'm a little dead inside, and so I'm a little inured to Austin Rivers' offense, where I'm like, that's like standard NBA stuff, where it's like, yeah, it's not pretty, and like he's trying to make stuff happen on his own. I also am just very big on the idea of anybody else making something happen is an ultimate net good for the Nuggets, because I don't worry about Jokic getting enough. Like, I don't worry.
I'm with you on this. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So like, I thought it was a really, and like, I'll admit, like, you're absolutely right. Well, the reason I kind of bring this up is it's been fascinating to kind of talk about Austin from the perspective of, you've mentioned some of the stuff that drives you crazy. Malone mentioned, he was like, I really like the fact that Austin's so quick with the ball. Like, that's something that
it's important.
He's singled out. And I think that's like a really interesting thing, is that because he's quick with the ball, he has more opportunities, but he's not like a great finisher, right? Like, he's not like an elite top level. Like, he doesn't have like a massive bag, right?
Your finishes that you're talking about, those like that finger roll, they're all when he beat his guy so much that he can just kind of lay it in. But like when he has to like, go around or, put some jelly on the layup, we don't see it really.
Yeah. And that's okay. Like, that's most NBA players, right? But it's
when
having
I said the offense, what I meant was like compared to like Will Barton, who I think is a very good offensive player, like dynamic. He's not that. You're taking something away offensively from a player like that, but you're adding a lot in one. Like, I just think it's easy when you have a player on the roster you don't have to feed. Just one. You got all the other guys, so you have 1 or 2 guys you don't have to feed, and then 2, just defensively, he's so good. Like, he really is a good defender.
Marian Jovnich in the comments ask, hot take, is Austin a better fit next to the starters than Barton? Why is it always somebody with an itch in their name that is always asking about, is there like it's like, if anybody has a good game, it's like, could they be a better fit than Barton?
Yeah, that's so true. Marcus Howard, did you see what he did? Oh my God.
Did you see what he did? Maybe he's just a lot of, it's always our friends.
The one thing I will say is, I do think that the final form with this Nuggets team, maybe next year, maybe does feature, I'm not saying Barton on the bench or this or that, but like, I do wonder if there are lineups that you go to more frequently that you place an Austin Rivers or a Davon Reed in that spot. Again, like I kind of like that as your best punch. Again, just because Jokic is at this level right now, where I just don't think you need that much offense on the court. I'm
open to this concept. I'm not against it, right? Like, I think Barton would be good off the read if that was or off the bench if that was what was called for. My only thing is I just want to get back to the intended starting 5 because Will was so damn good for that 5 game. It was 5 games.
True. I know.
Right.
It was more than that though, because he was really good before that, before Aaron Gordon. Like those numbers, even pre-Aaron Gordon were fantastic. So he's been great. And you're right. Here's the thing about Barton, and it's the same thing. I feel like it's easier to identify with other players like an Aaron Gordon, but like Barton, if he does end up going back to the Austin Rivers role, there are games where he just doesn't take a lot of shots. Like we've seen him take 5 shots, 6 shots, play 34 minutes, take 6 shots. And it's like, yeah, that and 5, 6 assists, plays good defense. So some of this I think probably is he's stepping outside those bounds in large part because he feels the Nuggets need it. And maybe the Nuggets actually on many nights do need it from him.
I also think it's interesting that there's kind of like a small evolution going here where even having talked to you from the start of the the start of the Jokic's career through now, like I can hear an evolution from you about what players need to be around Jokic, and a little bit of that I think is that he's become such a volume scorer.
Yep. This is 1,000% it. As I used to think, like, yeah, you need these guys around him that can score because he's going to set the table and make them hyper efficient. And now I'm just like, he needs Murray, and he probably needs like some good, solid guys. But I don't know that you need a whole lot more than that. Even Michael Porter, who I want to see it because I do think there's a scenario with the Nuggets where they just become nuclear on offense, like the Warriors, where it doesn't matter if you sacrifice a little defense; they're going to score every time down court. But there is this like Murray and Jokic and 3 average offensive players might be enough to be a top 3, 4, 5 offense. Like Jokic is at that level right now. So then you start to really think, do we just put some Aaron Gordons around him, like some real good defenders at every spot there to make sure that they're solid defensively?
I know Jarks wrote a column a couple of years ago about Jokic and suggested that 3 defensive players around him. I get a little, I think, concerned from the perspective of I feel like it puts a lot of pressure on those dudes to hit open threes if they're less like you want a little bit of bounce, I get that, but if they're defensive first players, they're usually going to be 3 and D, right? Because it's hard to find guys that are really good defensively, have a good on-ball game, and can shoot. Like you're gonna have to give up something in those categories.
But do you have to be as good of a 3-point shooter as Austin Rivers, or do you think it needs to be better?
Yeah, like that's a fair question, right?
He's like
so like, that's kind of the thing is like
shooter.
I honestly don't. But my thing is like I don't know how to get 37% plus 3-point shooters with great defense around Jokic.
What do you think of this lineup? And this isn't the final form. It's just a thought experiment. If you had fully healthy Jamal Murray, Austin Rivers, Davon Reed, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic, like what is that roster? Is that a good offensive roster?
Yes, because Joker.
And I think Davon Reed probably might be a 37% 3-point. I mean, he shot the ball really well. He was a good shooter in college. He might just be a good, like, easy shot maker.
I also think it's interesting because I would think that the offensive cap on that, like you're not going to get a 118 offensive rating out of that unit.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
But I also think it's interesting, especially in the context of this year, because I wonder if like offensive rating is down about 2 points. Now, I will say it's adjusted a lot over the last 2 weeks, and we're seeing these scores that are 137, 130 everywhere. But because of the changes in defensive calls, I just kind of wonder if that balance changes the equation, because it used to be like, can you build a 120 offensive rating? That's what everyone was going for. It's like, can you build a 120 offensive rating that doesn't give up a 125?
Right.
That was the previous model, and now it seems like, can you build a 113 offensive rating that gives up a 107?
Yeah.
That seems to be like what the category is. By the way, some questions about Will, as far as like, is this his yearly injury in March? No, he shot around yesterday, probably could have gone. He's gonna be back. I would say at least for the Golden State game, if not for Wednesday's matchup.
I think a little rest might be good for Barton, to be honest. Like this might be, I don't knock on wood, who knows, but this might be a good injury in that there's 4 games in 5 nights. If he just missed this and got a week off right here and then there's 4 weeks left in the season, that might actually be a nice little, hey, get healthy, be fully ready to go for the home stretch.
This is a good time to start doing that with everybody, honestly. Aaron could probably use one.
Yep.
All right. Let's take a break. We'll come back and then we'll talk about the Golden State Warriors and whether or not they're a good matchup for the Nuggets. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for making us part of your day. Make your men, make it as your first listen each and every day. Make your second listen Locked On NBA. I'm actually on Tuesday's episode, so you can check that out wherever you get podcasts, as well as Adam is on Fridays. So you should check that out. The Locked On NBA podcast on YouTube, as well as wherever you get podcasts. All right, Adam, the Nuggets. Time to get my nerd on. Nuggets won the season series last night versus the Golden State Warriors. They officially have tiebreaker over Golden State, which I cannot believe I'm saying this, may actually wind up mattering given that Golden State is in complete free fall. Now, Draymond Green comes back.
How far back are they? What is this? 22 losses to oh my God, you're right, 44 losses.
Yeah.
And they play it one more time, so you could get it. Yeah, you could catch up even more.
Yeah, they could catch up another game by Thursday. Like this could be a 2-game gap or a 1-game gap by the end of the week. That's not absolutely crazy to say because they're playing the Clippers tonight. We'll see. They rested everybody. So
actually, more importantly, the Warriors are the 3 seed currently. The Nuggets the 6 seed, and then even as important as that, Utah now is only 2 games behind the Warriors for that 3-4 split. So we used to think Golden State or Memphis, likely Memphis. Now it's like maybe it's likely Golden State, and by the way, maybe Utah.
Yeah, I just got to say this. If Golden State slides to the 4, Denver needs to very carefully position itself for the 6. If you get Golden State and Phoenix and Dallas on the other side of the bracket,
yeah, that's great.
That's ideal for Denver.
Yeah.
But we say that as if Golden State is a team to be afraid of, and yet Denver is 3-0 versus them this season. And although last night, let's be honest, that wasn't really the Warriors. Additionally, Denver's had success through the years versus the Warriors. They've had good years and bad years. They've lost to them a lot because the Warriors have been really, really, really good. But overall, there's actually been a trend of Denver competing with the Warriors. So I ask you, what do you think of this as a playoff matchup for the Nuggets, the Golden State Warriors?
Here's what I like about it. Steph Curry. There was a report yesterday that the Warriors have developed some losing habits, and it's understandable. They've lost Draymond Green. They've just what are they 2-8 in their last 10? I think. Yes. Yeah, 2-8 in their last 10. Like we're not that far from the end, the finish of the season, and to kind of be in a losing streak like that just invites negative energy. It invites sort of like whatever discomfort. So we saw the quotes coming out the other day about, hey, the Warriors are sick of, they can sense that they are maybe getting too comfortable with this. I'm curious to see how they respond, because if this continues for another couple of weeks, I honestly look at them and think, man, it is hard to flip a switch at the very end of a season and say, okay, playoff mode, let's go 2 weeks. We'll get ourselves in shape. But then beyond that, Matt, Nikola Jokic is the best player on the Nuggets, one of the best players, if not the best player in the NBA. Kevon Looney plays hard. He does a lot of things. First of all, he's small. He's not that big. Yeah. He doesn't jump. I just think that's a matchup where they don't have an answer, and they would have to outgun Denver, which they can do. But I just look at that one and I go, I think the Nuggets have as much of a mismatch for the Warriors as the Warriors do Denver. So I actually like that matchup.
To me, this comes down to like a simple thing. Over the course of 7 games, can Jokic quote unquote figure out, can he beat Draymond? Because that's going to be what they're going to do. Is like they're going to trust Draymond to guard him. They've done it before, and Jokic had trouble before. Now they're going to double.
He's also not had trouble before. He's also dominated him before.
Yes. Like that's the thing. I'm always very curious about that matchup, because to me, if you have a player that can break that small ball unit, they can be like, we're going to hurt you for playing Draymond. Like we're gonna do this. Like you think Draymond can guard anybody? He can't guard this guy.
Right.
If you do that, it significantly breaks down their defense. They don't want to double. Like they don't. This is their whole scheme, is they want to switch everything and be like, yeah, try and beat us. Like we have one-on-one defense is good enough. They will double Jokic because that's the best way for they know that they can't leave him in one-on-one coverage. But they will do it. I would say Golden State probably doubles later than most teams would. Most teams double early. Golden State's going to try and wait and then double because they don't want to give a naked double to Draymond to Jokic. But if Jokic can score in volume on Draymond and force them to be like, we get us some help sooner. Once you start doing that, Golden State, when they're scrambled, is out of their comfort zone. They don't want to make multiple rotations. And once they're out of their comfort zone, now their strength of their team, which is their defense, is no longer as strong. And especially this season, their offense is pedestrian. Like, that's what's crazy about this year. And this has been the whole year, even with Draymond, this is the way that it was, is when you look at this season, Golden State is 11th in adjusted offensive rating. Denver's 8th. Denver has a better offense than the Golden State Warriors and has consistently throughout the season. And that's overall. Half court, the advantage is even greater. Like, this is quite honestly not a bad matchup for the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs, which is crazy. They can still lose because
I still think they'd be underdogs.
Do what?
I think Denver would still be underdogs.
Yes, they would.
Vegas would still have them as underdogs.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that is you always got to think about it not from who should be favored, but from the perspective of if you were to put the Golden State Warriors as a underdog, how much money the book would take on.
Yeah, they would take a lot.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, Denver's a bad matchup Golden State's a bad matchup for Denver too. Like, Denver really struggles, especially with guards, with shooting and pick and rolls and all this stuff. So they would have the opportunity. Denver, sometimes you feel like you could count more on rebounding and scoring in the paint and drawing fouls. And then not to mention, like, that might end up being, Kevon Looney, I think he would probably struggle with foul trouble in that series. Like, Jokic playing 40 minutes a night is going to be drawing a lot of fouls, and then you have to go to some of your plan B stuff, or even your Draymond at center, your death lineups. Those are great for 7-8 minutes. But if you end up having to play them for 15, 16, 17 against Nikola Jokic, I just think there's a chance Denver can exploit that. So it'd be a fascinating series. If you look at the West, Denver's going to be an underdog in almost every series they would play, in my opinion. Vegas would have them an underdog. But Golden State, to me, I like that matchup just so much more than a Phoenix, maybe even more than like a Utah, to be honest. I mean, Utah, if Denver had all of their guys, I would feel better about a Utah, but they're going to have to score a lot of points to keep up with Utah, and I don't know. That'd be a tough one.
Yeah, I kind of look at Utah the same way, though, where if you make Gobert into no longer the incredible strength, things start to break down. Right. And Utah, you also, I think, would probably need to consider that Utah's perimeter defense is so bad, it makes it easier on a lot of the guys for the Nuggets that aren't as good on the perimeter. Like, I think that probably helps. One of my questions with the Warriors is you have to switch off ball with Curry when he's off ball. Like, you have to. Outside of Jokic, like, you have, like, it's not reasonable to expect Austin to chase Steph around all those screens. They'll do it a lot, but sometimes you just have to switch it. I don't know if their communication is good enough to make those switches. That's a concern. Like,
here's what I will say. They really impressed me against New Orleans in the fourth quarter in that specific way. And we talked about it yesterday, but they did a great job of doing that against New Orleans. And it's part of why it's a big part, maybe the number one reason they won outside of Jokic just going prime Wilt Chamberlain. But they did a good job of that. So I don't know. Denver's thing, I'm worried. This is another one of my takeaways is I'm a little worried about Denver's defense, but I also just know that this is a shorthanded group that's been grinding for 65 games. Like, I'm going to reserve judgment on what their defensive ceiling is for another couple of weeks.
Interesting. Okay. Most important role player in the series versus Golden State, if that happens.
Most important role player in Golden State?
Yes.
Man, that's a good question. Austin Rivers probably takes an elevated importance role because I'm just looking at defenders, like who's going to step in and be a good defensive player. So it honestly might be him.
Yeah. Who are you most worried about on the Warriors outside of the big three?
Another great question. Well, who's the big three? Are we counting Klay Thompson as a three right now? Because he's not really a big three at the moment.
Don't. Injury takes your consistency, not your peak. Like, I think Klay can still have a massive game. Bear in mind that I was in the building for Klay Thompson's Game 6 versus the Thunder, so I'm like, I am shaped by that experience. It was one of the weirdest basketball games to attend. Everyone was just shell shocked after. It was crazy. I
mean, this is a cop-out because there's a lot of guys who like pull easily, you could say. It honestly just might be Kevon Looney. And I think there's a scenario in which Jokic just renders him completely useless. And I don't know if they're going to go to Wiseman in a playoff series against Jokic. I mean, that would be cruel to Wiseman. So it might just be Kevon Looney. Like, can he stay on the court long enough? Can he make enough of an impact? Or do they have to go super small for 25, 30 minutes a night? And if they do, like, they're good at it, but they're not good enough to last that long.
My pick is JTA. That's my pick.
I mean, he's such a wild card because I don't trust his offense at all.
Nope.
But every now and then he scores a bunch of points. Like, every now and then he just catches fire.
Those are the guys.
Yeah,
those are always the guys. Like, because I was talking about this last night with Jordan Yang for the Sixers. I was like, there's gonna be some team is gonna get hit with the Jordan Yang series where he just hits like 3 threes a game.
Yeah,
and they're
but
like,
he's more, to me, he's a good offensive player. Like, I love you're talking about Yang in Philly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, to me, he's a really, really good offensive player, and he's a good shooter. So if you leave him open or screw up or decide to come off him, like, JTA is one of those guys where if you didn't guard him, 2 out of 4 times he might just not score. Like, he just might brick threes and not be able to cut or finish at the rim.
Okay, that's gonna wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets for Tuesday. Thanks for joining us, everybody, on a morning episode. We will be back tomorrow, another episode breaking down the Kings game, and then again on Thursday breaking down the Warriors game. We have lots of content for you this week on post games. Make sure to check out the YouTube channel, subscribe to that, give us those 5-star reviews wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for joining us, everybody. For Adam Mares, I'm Matt Moore. We'll see you guys again